Good evening, everyone. I can see that we've got people joining us. I'll just let people get a chance to be admitted into the this evening's webinar, and we will just give it a minute or so until we start. Okay, I'm sure there'll still be a few people will join us, but let's start this evening's event. My name is Professor Anthony Woodman. I'm Deputy Vice Chancellor and Provost for Health here at the University of West London. And it really is a great pleasure to be able to welcome you to this evening's event for alumni and others who are joining us, local residents, others interested in such an important subject, namely the role of activism in the NHS. But more than that, and what I'm absolutely delighted is that I'm joined this evening by an incredible panel of three absolutely inspirational individuals who absolutely, in my opinion, epitomize what is so good about the NHS in this country. And I absolutely know that the discussions we're going to have over the next 50 minutes or so will really bring that forward. So what I just need to say, one little bit of sort of housekeeping, is that if you do have questions, delighted to receive them. If you could post those in the Q&A part rather than the chat section of Zoom, that allows my colleagues to point me in the right direction, and we will try as a group to be able to answer as many of those as we can. So let me move across to, and when I say this panel is inspirational, you'll see what I mean. But before I start, what is even such a privilege is that all of those with me this evening are UWL staff and student alumni. They are UWL, they are the university, and it is so great to be able to say that and have what I view as then friends with us this evening. The first person, I'm going to actually be honest, I'm nervous about introducing my first guest because there is so much great stuff out there. Professor Dame Elizabeth Anionwu. What can I say that isn't out there? But I'm going to try a bit, and I know that Dame Elizabeth will bring forward a load of stuff as we talk through. Dame Elizabeth has spent over 40 years in the profession of nursing and has rightly been named one of the most influential nurses in the history of the NHS. But I'm delighted to say Dame Elizabeth is also Emeritus Professor of Nursing here at the University of West London. I'm really proud to be able to say that. As I say, if I had time, I'd love to be able to go through so much about what Dame Elizabeth has done. What I would honestly say is there is so much great material to read about Dame Elizabeth. Please do. I will try in our questioning to bring some more out. But what I will say, Dame Elizabeth was appointed as a Dame in 2017 for so much of what has gone in those years before. She is a fellow of the Royal College of Nursing. She has received a Pride of Britain Lifetime Achievement Award, that was in 2019, and has appeared on Desert Island Discs in 2020. But there is so much more, and that will come out as we talk through this evening. And I'm sure there were many people, and I'm delighted that the audience of people who will have been inquisitive to find out what Dame Elizabeth has done was increased when Dua Lipa dedicated her award to Dame Elizabeth. I was so proud, because even I was able to say to my daughter, I know Dame Elizabeth. I've spent, and that was great, and it was a fabulous achievement through. And I am thrilled that you have been able to join us this evening, and I so look forward to once again having a conversation with you. So thank you for joining us. The next member of the panel is Leslie Neu, and Leslie studied for her BA in adult nursing here at UWL, and it's always brilliant to have any of our alumni here. But for me, I'm going to be biased, Leslie. We didn't have a chance to talk before. She then chose to specialize as an oncology nurse. My background actually is oncology, but from molecular side. So I know you made the right choice there. But what I think is also so important was that you made the choice because of the experiences you've had. And I think a theme that's likely to come up this evening is how our own experiences really have an influence on our career and also on our activism that comes out of that. But what I'm also delighted in the case of Leslie was that once wasn't enough at UWL. She joined us to come back, and she did a master's with us in public health, and delighted that she's just been made a ward sister, and again incredibly proud of how things are moving forward. But what's really important was, and I was really taken by this, was that while studying her master's, Leslie realized that many of the issues around public health were not being discussed in her local community. So she turned to the modern aspects, the modern great tools, and in this case of Facebook, start hosting Facebook live shows to be able to talk to experts and colleagues about the importance of those basic checks, particularly around breast cancer, but other issues, just to make sure that we take control of our own health, but then allow us to be supported through. And I'm really looking forward to hearing more about that and how the impact of that on those communities. That to me really is, that's activism in its best sense. And then my final guest is Melissa Newman, and Melissa was the first winner of our Alumni Recent Award, Graduate Award that we made a few months ago, having graduated in midwifery from UWL in 2017. Subsequently, Melissa has gone from strength to strength from those foundations. She gained a master's from Queen Mary, University of London, and I'm delighted that Melissa is currently studying for her PhD. And I'm really interested in getting to see if we can hear a bit more about this, looking at UK paramedics' experiences of providing pre-hospital maternity care. That really must be a challenging position. I'm really interested in what's happening in that sphere. Melissa also volunteers for the ambulance service, and if doing a PhD volunteering wasn't enough, she's also been involved in the COVID vaccine program. And as I shared with everyone else, fine on the vaccine, but me and needles aren't really a good combination. So I really have great respect and time for that. Again, Melissa has shown the real value of the use of using social media, of being able to give advice and encouragement to aspiring midwives, and obviously Melissa herself is still a practicing midwife, and has published a number of articles and papers. I told you we had an inspirational panel, and I'll tell you, you've not even heard anything yet. But really, I am so delighted and grateful for all of you being able to join me this evening. So on that basis, I would like to move immediately to a very first question. And I have heard Dame Elizabeth speak a number of times, but there is nothing more inspirational than, I think, the part of the question that I think she will talk through now. That I'd like to ask you, Dame Elizabeth, what drew you into becoming a nurse and starting that fabulous, impactful career you've had from where we are now?
Thank you very much. And can I just say thank you for inviting me to be part of this event. I was so thrilled, because in these days, it's an opportunity for me to connect and reconnect with colleagues. I've had a quick look down the list, and I recognize quite a few of the names. So although we can't see each other, can I just say a big hello, but also to thank you, UWL, for involving me tonight. So I decided I wanted to be a nurse from about the age of 4 or 5. And the reason was that I was then living in a children's home. I was in a children's home until I was 9. And I had very bad eczema. And it was run by Catholic nuns, predominantly Irish nuns in Birmingham. And I used to have to go, I presume it was to the sick bay, quite regularly to have my dressings changed. And in those days, for eczema, it was coal tar paste, and then which is lovely and cooling on the itchy skin. And then they'd put gauze and then a bandage around it. My elbows and my knees were the worst affected, as is often the case. Now, the thing was, I would just peer around the door to see whether don't forget, I'm only about 4 or 5. Was it the black nun or the white nun that I was going to see? Now, actually, they were all white nuns, but what I was looking for was the white nun who was dressed in the white habit rather than the traditional black habit you would see nuns dressed in. And the reason I was looking out for this particular nun was she would always be able to change my dressings without causing me any pain whatsoever. And she would use what we call today distraction therapy. What I knew as a child was she would make me roar with laughing. Because why? You see, I was brought up in a very devout Catholic religious atmosphere, lots of church, and we were told that nuns were the brides of Christ, very holy women. And yet, what would this nun do? She would say words that I thought were so rude. One of the words was bottom. Well, you know, obviously now I wouldn't think it was rude, but a child, bottom is a very rude word. And I would fall for it every time, burst out laughing, bandage would be off, dressing would be off, and I wouldn't feel a thing. And I can't tell you how much that meant as a child who knew how painful it could be if they didn't do it that way. And just before I left the children's home, I discovered she was something called a nurse. Now, I knew I'd never be a nun, but I definitely decided I wanted to be a nurse. And that's what, I never changed my mind.
That's incredible, Dame Elizabeth. I really, you know, it shows two things there. It goes, all of us have the ability to influence. You just said there, it's very simple, was over being able to distract you. That person has never gone from your thinking. And that individual did not realize what impact they were going to have on nursing in this country as a result of taking you down that line. So no, that is so great to hear. Let's see, I'd like to turn to you again with a similar view, but add the twist of what made you go from adult nursing in general to then choose to go into the line of becoming a cancer specialist?
Okay, thank you, Professor Anthony Woodman, for the opportunity to come for this program. It's a privilege. Thank you once more. And thank you to all the viewers for joining in. So being an adult nurse, the reason why I chose oncology was because I had a mom who had breast cancer. So with that and the care she received, I decided to join nursing, and not only joining nursing, but being an oncology nurse. So when I finished, I worked in another one, then I joined the oncology department just to give back because of the care she had received And back home, the care wasn't great. The care is still not great compared to here. It's still very backward, and it's kind of a taboo topic. People don't talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
So when my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer, we didn't know. We're still very young, but we didn't know. She hid it. She was hiding it for a long time, almost 7 years. We had no idea until my elder sister kind of discovered. My mom didn't tell her, but she bumped into my mom's room and realized she had a sore on her breast. And because we're so young, we didn't know it was cancer. We just thought, oh, mom has a sore on her breast. It's not until she now explained to her, and with all that, the treatment started. And being a nurse, and I started realizing the care that she was receiving from the nurses back home. And I told myself, I need to give back something. And that's how I joined oncology nursing. And then from there, I went back to uni to do a public health. I always wanted to do public health. But then I didn't realize that university, when I finished my degree, University of West London was not doing public health masters at that time. So I kept checking. And then one day I just stumbled on it. Oh, University of West London has started a master's in public health. And I was so excited. So I said, oh, are you still admitting students? And they say, yeah, we are. So I applied and I got admitted into the program. And then I started the program, 2 years program. And when I finished, I realized with being on a cancer ward and the kind of patients that were coming in, I realized women from the BME background, they were coming in with advanced stages of cancer. And having a conversation with them, I did realize it was still a kind of a taboo topic to them. They were either hiding it, they didn't want people to know, and it was related to other stigmas and other issues surrounding BME communities. And with that, I now told myself I need to do something to sensitize the public, to sensitize this community, to make them aware that early detection is key, and cancer is not a curse, it's not something to be hiding, it's not a taboo topic. And that's how I went from nursing to public health and then into raising awareness.
Now, again, brilliant, inspirational, and I think we'll pick up more again about that personal drive that makes such a difference for you to go on wider. So thanks for that, Leslie. Melissa, again, coming from a similar mode, interested, two elements here. Interested in what drew you into the career, but I'm also, because I work here with a number of our colleagues in midwifery, what has also led you to also go to the PhD as well on the same time? And I'm just interested in that dynamic as well, the importance of research supporting practitioners in a way in the NHS as well. So very interested in your thoughts around that.
Yeah, so thanks for having me here tonight. Thanks for everyone listening or catching up on YouTube. So I feel like I've always wanted to be a midwife, well, since about the age of 14 anyway, so not quite as young as Dame Elizabeth, but since I was about 14 anyway, and I had more awareness of what the role of the midwife was. But yeah, I don't really remember deciding that I was going to become a midwife. I feel like it was more of a calling inside me, like I just knew it was what I was going to do. So I couldn't apply for a UCAS until I was 17 years old in sixth form. So between the ages of 14 and 17, I spent a few years trying to gain different work experiences. Because obviously the midwifery degree is really competitive. So I knew that I had to maximise my chances with lots of different work experience and that. So yeah, I applied at 17 and I was lucky enough to get a couple of offers, but UWL was always my top choice. So I was lucky enough to go there and yeah, graduated 3 years later with a first class with honours. And I was drawn to midwifery because it just encompasses everything that I'm passionate about empowering women and birthing people and educating them about their rights, advocating for their wishes and witnessing everyday miracles, because it's not every day that you get to go to work and witness new life coming into the world, or even if you're not facilitating births, you're involved in that antenatal, postnatal journey, early stages of parenthood. It's just such an absolute honour to be, let into families' lives at the most vulnerable, pivotal, special time of their life. So that's how I went into midwifery, and then so I worked full-time for about 18 months, did my preceptorship, got my band 6 after 5.5 months, because I always knew that I wanted to go on to do a master's and PhD. So I tried to do my preceptorship as fast as I could. And I also got a few papers published and presented some of my work at the Royal College of Midwives conference in Manchester. And in my own time, to maximise my chances of getting onto the Masters and for my PhD application as well, I was also undertaking like work experience and volunteering in various medical, nursing and paramedicine fields as well, and research fields in my own time. So my Masters at Queen Mary was in genomic medicine. So I was out of my depth, I'm not going to lie, because everyone on my course had BScs in genetics or biomedics or genomics, and I was the only healthcare professional on there. And I barely knew what any of the words mean. I just recognised on my first day, I remember sitting there on my own, I just thought, oh my God, I've made a massive mistake. Well, I was like, I haven't made a mistake, but I was questioning, have I made a mistake? The only words I understood was like the and stuff. So I barely knew what a Punnett square was. So yeah, but I managed to do that. I did that 1 year full time, got through that luckily. And a few weeks before that ended, I started my professional doctorate in health at the University of Bath, which was quite sort of logistically interesting because the two unis are 120 miles apart and I had to be in both places at the same time, which obviously I couldn't be, but it was very interesting. So yeah, I'm now next month, sort of 6 weeks time, I should go into my 3rd year of my professional doctorate. You have up to 8 years to complete the course, but I was hoping to do it in 3.5, but COVID's meant I've had to change some things. So it might be 3.5, 4 years now, but that's still fine. I'm just trying to get it done as fast as I can. I've decided to do it in a sort of paramedical topic because in the 3rd year of my midwifery degree for our elective placement, I organised mine with the ambulance service, just because I've always had an interest in paramedicine. I thought it was just a great opportunity to get to go out with them. And I just loved it. My placement that I'd arranged was only a few days, but I just never left. 5 years later, I still, pre-COVID, I haven't been able to do it for the last year, but I'm hoping to get back to it soon. But yeah, so I had all these years of volunteering all throughout. I couldn't get hours signed for it for my degree. That had to be in midwifery, but I still did it in my free time. I loved it. I've made some amazing friends for life and gone out of different stations and things. And yeah, I just love it. And from that, I've just realized that the consensus seems to be that paramedics, when they have maternity jobs come through, they seem to be sort of fearful and anxious, and the literature supports this as well. Not that there's a lot of literature on it, but what little there is around the world does support that as well. So I decided to do my PhD in researching their experiences of providing pre-hospital maternity care with a view to improve the service for not only the paramedics, but also women and birthing people that receive the service as well.
It's great to see how the two came together from both sides, and I'm sure we'll come back and touch. So let's get on to the real core bit, because what is key around the three of you is fabulous professionals in your discipline, but you go beyond that. And I think that to me is so important, and the role of activism. And I know we've had a number of questions already coming in, and I'll try and bring some of those around. But Dame Elizabeth, what motivated you to go from that great story about becoming a nurse to be an outstanding nurse, but also a force for change in the profession generally, and the recognition of people, particularly Mary Seacole, but others who had been also so inspirational at changing our nursing? What was it that really sparked that?
Anger.
Anger.
I've had time now to reflect on what has driven me into certain campaigns.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the two campaigns that I've been involved in, I would say on a broader front, and they were all with other people. The first was improve the quality of care for those affected by sickle cell disease, and I became the first sickle cell nurse specialist in the country in 1979 in Brent. And the other area a bit later on was campaigning again with others for a statue of Mary Seacole that you've just flagged up. So I think if I could give the example of sickle cell to illustrate how I've reflected and realize actually how important anger is. Anger is often looked at in a scary way, you know, and particularly when we're talking about something like sickle cell, which as we know, it affects many ethnic groups, but it is particularly important within African and African Caribbean communities. As I said, it is found in Mediterranean. Blue-eyed, blonde-haired individuals can get it. Let me just get that out there.
No.
But in respect to my own experiences, it was certainly particularly of African Caribbean heritage that I came across. And what I realized was that I was very angry about when I was a health visitor in Brent in the early 70s, and one of my families had a young boy with sickle cell anemia. Now the mother, when I visited her, the young lad was lying on the couch. He'd recently been discharged from hospital, was moaning with a bit of pain, but not excruciating pain as you can get, of course. Now, the mother was actually reasonably happy with the medical care that she was getting for her son. What she was frustrated about was that she wanted to know more about the illness and how could she, as a parent, try and reduce the suffering that she witnessed in her young son. And could she prevent anything? We've seen the public health perspective come out clearly here. And as a health visitor, yeah, I was attuned to what she was wanting to do. But I realized I couldn't answer her questions and I couldn't give her the information in the way that I would have been able to give information to a parent or a carer of a child, for example, with epilepsy or many other conditions that we had been taught about in our what was state registered nurse training in those days in Paddington in the late 60s. And then health visitor, my health visitor certificate in West London in the early 1970s. Neither of those courses mentioned sickle cell at all. Now that made me very, very angry. And then I found my father when I was a health visitor, and I then found that I have a cousin with sickle cell anemia. So I call it the 3 Ps. As you know, I've written my memoirs, and I have now a chapter in the new edition called Personal, Professional, and Political. And you can see in with those 3 Ps, professionally, I was angry that I hadn't been taught about this condition. Neither had many of my colleagues. It's changing, but it's not changed enough, Anthony. We've seen several tragedies of unnecessary deaths. Prior to COVID, I have to flag up, 2019, a death in North London and a death in Manchester, totally avoidable, coroner's statement. So there's still issues about education of health professionals, and let's look at, obviously I'm interested in nurses and midwives, but we're talking about all health professionals, but in particular for nursing and let's say nursing, because that's the area I know better. Unfortunately, you can still get a student doing a 3-year degree in nursing, leaving the College of Nursing and not having been taught about sickle. It's very ad hoc. Now there is efforts being made, and these 2 tragedies have brought it to the fore, sadly, but and that's why you get anger. It's a rage. It's health inequality. It's why. And but on the positive side, I've realized that anger generates energy, and it's negative, but it's also positive.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just lucky. I think I'm very lucky that my energy my anger created positive energy, or energy that pushed me in a positive direction to try and do something about it with others. And that's where the sickle cell campaigns, the creation of the Sickle Cell Society, the charity, which still exists, but also questioning. I love students that question. I know they can get on people's nerves, but I remember I was a questioning student, and I know I used to irritate the life out of. In fact, you don't know this. I don't know whether you know. You should probably maybe do. I actually got failed in my health visitor placement.
Did you?
Because I was asking too many questions. And fortunately, I was involved with politics with a small p.
Mm-hmm.
And shall we just say that I opened my mouth disgusted because I was very depressed about it, as you can imagine.
Absolutely.
and doors opened to me as a result, and support was given to me to challenge that failing on my practical placement, and that I was perfectly right in what I was questioning. But it just shows the difficulties that you can experience if you are involved with campaigning. But if you're involved with others, that's where things can turn out all right. So I think I've probably explained quite a bit there. Is that
no,
all?
but that's great, and I'm going to come back to you again in a bit to talk about and how do we take this through into the future. But I'll come back to you on that, because I couldn't agree with you more. Anger in a positive manner is a real force for challenge, and people too often, as you say, try to discount that and take that through. Leslie, can I come on to you? Was when you were you thanks so much for sharing about your experiences with your mum. For you again there on that part, was it anger, or was it something else that you found, said, I want to make a difference?
I think it was anger mixed with frustration and pain.
Yeah.
It was all three of them, because I was angry that she was hiding it because of the stigma attached to it. And I was also disappointed and angry because if she had opened up, she would have gotten the help she needed on time.
Yeah.
And then another issue, her friends, sometimes I'll ring back home and also her friends have died of cancer and the kids never even knew. So all of that just made me more frustrated. Yeah. And I asked myself, why should a disease be so stigmatized that people get labeled for having it when it's something you are not responsible for? So all of that really led me into that frustration, that anger, that pain of losing a mom for something that could have been avoided. And then not only losing her, losing other women. And then working in the NHS as well, I thought it was different back home. But even here, I realized it's just something people carry with them wherever they go. The different communities, it's still the same community. So they still have that problem even here. They are stigmatized for having it. There was a time I had a district nurse who came in and said she went to visit someone at home, and this lady was basically locked up in a room who had breast cancer, and the whole house was stinking because they thought it was a curse or that had come upon her, and they had abandoned her in that room. And by the time she came into hospital, the tumor was fungating, it was smelly, and we couldn't help her. So it's things like that that really, it got me angry to the point where I asked myself, where do we go from here? What can I asked myself, what can I as a person do to change the situation or make a difference before looking at what the NHS is doing or what others are doing? I can start making a difference. And that is how I started my online campaign and started this talking to people and going to different communities to talk about breast cancer. But then with time, it broadened because I left from cancer and people started saying, oh, this person has diabetes, they are not managing it well. This one has died of hypo, and it was just different. And as Professor Elizabeth talked, I've also hosted a talk on sickle cell with a friend in London who has sickle cell. Yeah. And it's also an area where it's really not very widely known. And because it's affecting just the BME communities and very few people, Africa, Asia, and Caribbean people. So these are all areas that people don't really talk about. So I started diversifying from cancer to different areas, mental health, depression, autism, sickle cell, and just different topics, just because people need to hear. And my audience, I go to community churches, I go to community groups, I go to schools. Recently, I was invited to go to a workplace, a factory site with 200 workers, but I couldn't go because of the COVID. And they wanted me to come and talk about prostate cancer because they have a lot of Black men who work there. And the thing is, with us in our community, we don't really like going to hospitals. And especially the men, it's not until it is very severe or serious that they get help, and then at that time it's too late. So it's just a accumulation of anger, frustration, pain, and all of that that led me to follow this path.
Yeah, no, that is great again to see that positive force. Now, what I'd like to do is to link from you, Leslie, to Melissa about the ability to use social media. I'd have loved to have asked Dame Elizabeth Hughes if she'd had social media in 1970. What could have been? So I'm really interested, Melissa, about you, how you found social media, and we know that Leslie also has used that very effectively. Was it a fairly obvious, simple, a dinosaur like me didn't really do much in the way of social media, so of course doesn't reach out to that. But I am interested around that. And again, in that self, we all know that social media can be a great force for the positive, but there is a risk, isn't there, sometimes that people misconstrue what you're doing. So really interested in how you found that as a tool for change, Melissa.
Yeah, so you do have to be really, really, really careful with your social media. I never actually intended my Instagram account to grow this big, actually. It was actually completely anonymous for the first couple of years. Didn't have my name, didn't have any photos of myself or anything identifying attached to it at all. And it was a very small account. I never thought it would grow to this size of being a beautiful, supportive, empowering community that's helped so many people fulfill their dreams. I kind of, on my account, I like to raise awareness of sort of taboo and often unspoke about. Some people might view it as sometimes controversial topics, things people don't really talk about. They stray away from, like bullying, politics, the sort of NHS, how sometimes it can be a poor working environment, culture, mental health, etc., those sorts of things. Because I tried to keep the account really positive but real, because otherwise people wanting to enter into any healthcare profession or any career within the NHS, they're going to go into it with rose-tinted glasses otherwise, if they don't know some of the potential challenges that they might encounter. So I think it's just important to sort of inform people about things that they might come up against so that they can have strategies to cope with it. Because I went into midwifery, I applied when I was 17 and started straight out of school, and I didn't know, and I didn't even get social media at all until I was 19. So I wasn't that sort of person or anything. I only got it to join my cohort's Facebook group. So yeah, I just think it's important. Some of the things, my account, I tried to make it the things that I wish, the account I wish had existed when I was a student, so that I knew I wouldn't be bullying, for example. The bullies make you feel alone. I think that's what they want. They don't want you to talk about it. So by talking about it, you're showing other people they're not alone, breaking down the gaslighting and things like that. So that's what I try and do.
Brilliant. No, thanks for that. And that link's great. There's a couple of questions that have come up on the chat, which link with a lot of what you said. I've got one is, we just talked about there, the risk of getting it right. How do you know that the information you're using as an activist or an instrument to change, how do you actually get the information yourself that makes sure the facts are the change? That we've talked about with Dame Elizabeth, the anger is a positive force because you're always doing it based on that. So that's one bit, and I'll come to. And the other is very linked, is how effective and efficient are your methods in achieving the political and social goals of change and activism you're looking to do. So I'm intrigued there with the transition that I'm sure Dame Elizabeth saw from very traditional, probably having to pick up the phone and just banging on people's doors, to perhaps more social media, to perhaps your experiences. Perhaps, Dame Elizabeth, can I come to you in a way? How have you coped with making sure what you knew you had the facts behind you, and you were then able to get them out to the people who needed to hear you?
Yeah, that's a very, very important point. I mean, I actually love Twitter, believe it or not.
Okay.
I'll put my Twitter handle up on the chat later on if people would like to.
That's great.
Follow, and I will follow back as much as I can. So, for example, I have been involved a little bit in the issue recently, this tragedy that we've flagged up already, about sickle cell disease, because my concern is that so much progress was made in awareness. It wasn't complete. Personally, I think that it should be mandatory that student nurses are taught about sickle. Let me put my cards on the table. Because anywhere in the country, because you don't know where individuals affected by the illness live, people can move around, nurses can move around. It's common sense that there should be something, so that's an area. Now, when these recent tragedies emerged, you check your facts first of all. I mean, I find it much easier to source what is going on through the internet, although we've got to be careful, but also through groups like the Sickle Cell Society. So I knew that they would be approached by the families, and they were. So I always make sure I've got the facts correct as much as, well, as far as you can. And also, I do look at when things go haywire for certain people on Twitter, and why does it go haywire? And we can only just, I'm students I know are taught about this, but for somebody like myself who's retired, I've always self-taught myself about lots of things. And I think the university is always saying it's lifelong learning.
Absolutely.
So first of all, have that humility to know that you're not up to date. You don't know everything. You cannot rely on this tweet or that tweet. You go back, and you should have networks, resources in esteemed individuals who've, you know, published about it or been active about it. There are different ways you can check out things quite quickly, I think. Maybe because I've got older, I've got faster at it, but I think the resources are there in a much more straightforward way today than they were with our dusty textbooks. I mean, I remember when I was a student nurse, we were given one medical nursing textbook. We were never encouraged to read journals.
No.
And, you know, this was like the Bible, and you know, look how different it is now. It could be a bit overwhelming for people, and that's maybe why mistakes occur, not deliberate mistakes, but where you get incorrect information going out on social media.
Yeah.
I think it's more the problem that I don't like about social media. It hasn't, touch wood, it hasn't happened to me yet, but this trolling, this viciousness that you see online that can deter people from wanting to make use of that format, for example. But I think it's actually a very, very powerful tool for social activism. A really powerful.
It is, yeah.
I agree. My biggest fear is that last bit that you've got is that there are so many people then who push back on it, and as you've basically said, you know your facts are right, you know that this is a cause that must change, and therefore you keep at it and don't allow people to be deflected.
And Anthony, do you mind if I just?
Of course, no.
One of my dear colleagues, Ramesh, has asked a question.
I saw that come up in the chat.
Pick it up later, or do you want me to?
No, I'm happy for you to go for it now. Please.
I've seen it. So thank you. Lovely to see you, Ramesh, there, or not see you, but. And he's asked, sickle cell disease is an important health problem. What can UWL do to raise its awareness in the pre-registration and post-registration nursing programs? Well, first of all, it should be looking at its programs, and can it say hand on heart that we have students leaving their programs having had some information about this condition, and not in the way where it's left to the student to decide whether they will look into this area or not. We can argue, I think, patients coming in with a sickle crisis into A&Es in London, it's one of the top 16 illnesses that cause a contact with accident emergency. So we can argue that it's a priority, because we all know the curriculum is heaving.
Absolutely.
But actually, and I think we have to relate it to Black Lives Matter, because actually, do Black Lives matter if patients with sickle cell disease are dying unnecessarily or suffering unnecessarily? I think, you know,
I think that statement there absolutely is so important.
So I think it's important that, and I hope maybe that UWL will actually reflect on this issue and just check, are your students leaving with this information? Please, that's my request, and that answers Ramesh's question as well, I think.
The good thing I have is I know a very, very good person I can come and talk to if I need any advice on this, Dame Elizabeth. So at least I don't have that as any reason. Well, who do I get this from? So I think very, 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 very valid points there. And actually, I'd like to take the Black Lives Matter and the supportive community, come to you, Leslie, because I'm really intrigued there. You made, right, this there's an element of most of us as men are not very good about looking after our health. But you've also added the added dimension of communities that it can be amplified. And so I'm intrigued there as to whether you ever thought that there might be a better way, and I'm not, don't take that to believe, I think there is, whether you thought Facebook was the best way to go, or was that almost by chance that you started using Facebook and then you saw there was traction with your community actually feeling comfortable that they trusted to interact with you through that?
So at that time, I think the only social media that I had was Facebook. And because I had so many friends, having traveled a lot, I had so many friends, almost 1,000 friends on Facebook. So I decided to launch my Facebook talk in October, which was Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Mm-hmm. So I did a Facebook live video on breast cancer awareness, and the response was overwhelming. Within a week, I had almost 1,600 views. So that kind of motivated me and said, oh, actually people are watching. Yeah. And then I started receiving messages on my inbox from Ghana, from America, from Germany, from the UK, from all over the world. That's my friends. And then most of them were now talking about other relatives who had cancer and how they could help and all of that. So in that process, because the response was getting overwhelming, I had to contact Macmillan in Reading at the Royal Berkshire Hospital to see how we could work in partnership. And they did agree. So I started working in partnership with them. They'll give me some leaflets, give me advice, and I'll meet some of their nurses and then we'll have a discussion on how to go about my talks. And then at one point, they even advised me to start a BME support group for breast cancer women in the UK, which I started. So the Facebook, from there, I realized the demand on Facebook was getting a lot. So what I did, because I wasn't a specialist in all the areas, but I realized people were asking different questions, even in areas that I wasn't a specialist in. I now started it. My Facebook page was Let's Talk, Lessine Health and Wellbeing Talk. So I'll bring a specialist on and then I'll come up with questions where I'll ask them questions and then they'll answer on the program live. And then people could send in their questions and then the specialist will answer. So that's how it went. And the view was great. People were enjoying it. And that's how it just blew up. So yeah, so that's how I've been running it. But I think with time I have to go to Twitter and the other handles. Maybe Professor Elizabeth will tell me more about Twitter and I can extend it.
Excellent, excellent.
Yes.
Right, Melissa, I'd like to now come and move us to start looking forward. You've been looking at a number of angles around midwifery, and it's interesting to see this how paramedic insight into this as well. What are your views on it's a very biased question, is activism still important in the NHS? What are your views about, from what you've been seeing, what you've also been researching? Have we moved to a position now where no, we either you feel that there isn't any more to be done around activism, or that we perhaps live in a world where, well, government's not going to listen to it anyway? And I'm really interested in your views, where you see things going as your career now develops forward.
Yeah, I mean, the 5 times more campaign, the Instagram there and Twitter as well, the 5 times more campaign is just living proof that online activism does result in hopefully change, but definitely being heard. They got a debate in government through their petition as well, and people writing to their MPs. They got heard in government a couple of months ago. So that's just proof that very important issues that need speaking about and changing can, online activism can make a difference. And I think if you don't do online activism, then nothing changes and people just accept things the way they are. The needs of our population and our patients are evolving, and healthcare professionals, all healthcare professions, it's, their lifelong careers of professional and personal development. It's in the NMC code as well, to continually develop, to meet the needs of your patients, learn new skills, update your skills, things like that. So, we need to like move with the times, and part of that is activism about whatever important thing at the time. Yeah.
No, that's really, really useful. And then Leslie, I wanted to come to see whether you see there is an opportunity where at the moment a lot of your work is really important information work in communities. Do you see you becoming more of an activist outside to say, look, you know, it's a bit, I'm going to come to what Dame Elizabeth said, you know, it is, you know, Black lives do matter. And so, for example, do you see that the knowledge and the insights you have can actually now go to a wider community? You still retain the really important information and support, but actually you change structural changes that Dame Elizabeth has brought. Do you think is that something where you go, yes, do you know what, I'm the right person, I can have a real impact?
Yes, I do think to an extent I do, but one of the things with activism as well is to raise awareness and be able to empower people to be able to take control of their health. So, and also to bring social change. So with activism as well, the campaigns and the government will need to take action and bring action and change situations and policies. So with this, I think it is very important because being an activist, it depends on the groups and it depends on your impact that you want to make. So when you bring that change, it kind of affects different people and different communities. And for me in particular, I'm particularly towards the BME community. That is where I really want the change. And I can also work hand in hand with my job and then do the activism as well and raise the awareness in the communities that need it. And because I speak French, I know I've been invited in other French-speaking communities who don't speak English and they don't even go to hospital and they don't understand so many things. So sometimes they get to ring me to say, oh, can you come, or can you interpret, or can you encourage them to come out and go for checkups and all that. And also with activism as well and social media. During the COVID, we know a lot of BME people were not going for the vaccines. So what I did as well was having to invite some BME doctors to come on Facebook and then talk about the vaccine, talk about the importance of taking the COVID jab and the vaccine, because there was a lot of stories, a lot of stigma, a lot of myths about COVID vaccine and Black community and targeting, trying to, you know, all those stigmas and all those talks that were going on and all the theories and all that. So it's very important what we say to the communities, what we bring out, because as Melissa says, social media, we have to be careful as well, because if you say the wrong thing and it goes out, there are people who don't analyze, there are people who don't read, they don't research, they just take it for what it is. And if people go out first and give out the wrong information, then they kind of detract the people and they give out the wrong information that prevents or hinders people from getting the right information later on and taking the right action. So yeah, so activism is very important, and the people who know what they're talking about, they need to go out there first and make the difference and say the right things.
Absolutely, Leslie. Couldn't agree more. And that's why I'm going to come to my last question of the evening, which I'm going to put to Dame Elizabeth. Is firstly, I never believe a word of it when you say you're retired, which is good. So I still have huge confidence, because what I think I'd like to just get your views on is that obviously tonight we've got a number of people who have joined us who are either working in the NHS or are looking to come into careers in the NHS. What's your message to them in the sense of not only the career, but also where the fights, the activity, where we still need to make such major changes to ensure there's fairness, equality, and an effective NHS for everybody?
Thank you, Anthony. One of the things that I've realized, and it's from, again, personal reflections on my career and life, is that it's often, as we've heard from Leslie and Melissa, personal experiences that have driven us or pointed us or enthused us to go, have helped us identify certain issues that we feel need to be improved. So you don't have to be you know, a major political radical. You just have to have this feeling that something's not quite right with this issue that you've come across as a student, in practice, wherever. And then the next thing is, so what? Because we often feel that we're helpless as individuals, and that we can't intervene. And bullying and harassment is sadly an example. But actually, I've learned from reading and listening to more podcasts, watching documentaries, films, from the lives of others, such as Nelson Mandela. You know, if how did they overcome much greater obstacles than possibly some of the issues we're aware of? And then also, it's to focus on, basically, don't take on too much. Try and decide with colleagues or friends and trusted people which issue might you want to put some energy into, because otherwise you'll end up as a nervous wreck because you can't deal with it all. And I hope you don't mind, Anthony, but I'm plugging my new memoirs that are
No
coming
problem
out
at all.
in
No problem.
September, because what I've done is with, and this version is through publishers. My one 5 years ago was self-published, as you know. So this is actually an updated one, but they forced me to reflect. I'm sure a lot of the tutors out there will go, yeah, because I'm very much, I want to put the facts down. But what the editors that I've been involved with have helped me do is force me to say, but why, Elizabeth? Why? And we've done this over Zoom. I haven't even had to write it, and they've transcribed it all. So it's actually a much fuller account of what has led me into being involved with certain things, but also what strategies were used in respect to sickle cell and Mary Seacole statue, for example.
Yeah.
And I think we have to learn from other people. How do they do things? So that's my offering tonight. Oh, by the way, UWL, I'm sure will stock it in their library. So those of you that don't have any money whatsoever will go and be able to borrow it. Isn't that right, Anthony?
It is absolutely true. Of course.
I don't want to appear to be selling tonight.
No,
seriously.
not at all. No, not at all. It is from having heard you speak about the previous publication of it. It is so inspirational. I absolutely would recommend it to anyone in any discipline. Actually, your comments there about driving and looking is in nursing in the NHS, but it would be equally true to anybody in any areas they work in. So, no, please, I would absolutely commend the people. Please do read that and our library. And I would again get a plug for our alumni. Of course, as alumni of the university, the library is available for you to come and be able to get stuff. So again, please do. Sadly, we've come to the end of a wonderful hour. Oh, Leslie.
Yeah, there's a question there I would like to answer. I think, is it Agatha who has said, how do you finance yourself and how do you encourage others?
Yeah.
So what I do, because I work with Macmillan, if I have an event, they pay for the hall. And I've used different ways. I've used my birthday to raise money on Facebook through GoFundMe, where I've raised almost more than £1,000. I have done breast cancer awareness parties. I call it parties at home, where I invite friends to come round, and then we do like a breast cancer check. We do all the checks. Then we sit down, I talk to them about breast cancer, and then they do make a donation. I've raised almost 400 from that as well. I've done cake sales. I go to my local church, I tell my pastor, and then I come with some cakes, I sell it, and I raise money. So any opportunity I have to raise money, I do it. So, excellent. And that's how I've been raising money for, for my event.
Great bit of advice there, Leslie. Look, I said that the panel was inspirational, and you know, they are. There's very little. People who know me being lost for words is quite a rare event, but with a panel like this, you know, that it is. It's been amazing. Look, thank you, Damon, Elizabeth, Leslie, Melissa. I really have enjoyed so much, and I really hope that all of you who've joined in, who again, really appreciate you taking the time to listen, have also found this evening inspiring, but also for me, it's raised so many more questions that I want to go out now and look more into the points that have been raised. So I'll be going down that. I want to thank Marcus and colleagues in Alumni and Development. This is one of the many events that they run for UWL alumni, or on behalf of the university, and it showcases our amazing alumni. And you know, you are, all of you, whether you're, say, the panelists tonight, but those of you listening, you are amazing. We know what you've done to get to where you are. Keep in touch with us, because we generate so much here. I've been challenged now by Dame Elizabeth to make sure that our curriculum's fit for purpose. That's what I want. You are out there in the real world. Careful, I'm in some, you know, ivory tower. It does matter. Feedback to us. So even that internal activism as an alumni is hugely important, and you know, really would look forward to hearing from you. I would also again go for any of you there who are looking for any advice about where your career is now, where you want to go. Again, reach out to us. You know, it's a lifelong partnership being with the University of West London, and I don't mean that in a negative, I mean that in a positive, to support you. If you want to get rid of us, you can ignore us, but we are here as well. If there's anything we can help do, advise, or as Leslie did, you know, you come back and do a master's with us. We're always welcome to meet you. I'll be putting this webinar will go on to YouTube, and what I'll also do is work with colleagues. That there were a number of other questions we couldn't answer. We'll look to get a transcript of those out there, and so you can get that information. And apologies that, you know, the discussion was great. We weren't able to come to all of those, but really do value your comments. So I would just like to again thank my three amazing panelists. Thanks so much. You did as I said you would do. You gave me a really great hour, and you made my job so easy. I hope everyone's really enjoying this evening, and I really hope that you'll come back. I'm hoping the three of you come back to us again as well, and I'd love it to be an in-person one. But to anyone else who's tuned in this evening, please do come along to any of the other alumni events, and we look forward to joining you. So thank you all very much. Stay safe. You know, we still have a lot of things to look after, a lot of people in our communities with COVID, and sadly, as we discussed tonight, beyond COVID, there are still so many health issues to address. So I want to thank all of you who are working in the NHS and allied health professions. You know, you're doing an incredible job. Anyway, what we've seen over the last 2 years is even bigger. So thank you again, and that's just a personal thank you from me. Thank you all very much. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.